let's go ahead and dive in. Super excited to be chatting with everybody today. Thank you so much for all of the chat. So excited to hear that everybody's loving the new Top Gun so far. Hoping to go see it sometime soon. But thank you everybody for being here again. My name is Ashley Alford and I am the account manager here at Flo Recruit. And I'll pass it over to my colleague, Kristen.
Hey everyone, we're so happy you're here. I'm the Customer Success Manager here at Flo Recruit, and I'll pass it back to Ashley.
Awesome. Well, we're super excited. We're going to talk a little bit about really all the things, but the whole point of today's webinar is to make sure that you feel as prepared as possible for the upcoming OCI season. Some of the folks on this call may be veterans and are, understand everything and are ready to go, while there's others on the call today that might be a little more new. So this is for our law school clients. We had 2 other webinars yesterday and the day before for our employer side, both clients and non-clients. All of the webinars are recorded. So going on to the next slide here. Some housekeeping, again, use the chat for any comments or if you just want to say hello. If you have any questions throughout the webinar today, please use a designated Q&A chat piece there to ask your questions. We will be answering questions throughout the conversation, but we also have a designated Q&A piece at the very end of the webinar today. And then, as I mentioned, the webinar is being recorded, so we will send it out roughly about 24 hours, may even go out today, to anybody who registered. And then all of our webinar recordings are actually posted on our website. So feel free to take a look there, grab any recordings if you want to send them out to your employers. That's also a really good idea too. Okay, and then the agenda for today. So we're going to go over, like I said, a little bit of everything. We'll go over some of the best practices and resources for this upcoming OCI season and how particularly they pertain to Flo Recruit. We'll also go through the process of setting up your interview schedules on a very high level. Kristen will be leading that and just make sure that you are comfortable. I think that's probably where we'll have the most questions, so please send those in. We'll also dive into some product updates. So anything that has changed since last fall OCI, and even some that maybe you've already used, but are just good to remind everybody of, what's different from last OCI season compared to this one. And then at the very end, we will be making a future product announcement. So stay tuned for that. Hang on to the very end if you can, and we'll give you a little glimpse into what we've been working on. All right, and before we dive into all of those things, we are going to do a little poll. So the question is, how would you rate your stress level going into this OCI season? So the choices are comfortable and excited, cool as a fan, slightly stressed but feeling confident. Fourth one is, it's OCI season, need I say more? And then very last is, help, I'm drowning. So we'll give it a little bit. We have some good responses coming in. Maybe we give it another 15 seconds or so before we close it out. But thanks so much, everybody, for voting. Okay. So it looks like we've pretty much leveled out here. Let's go ahead and share the results. All right. So it looks like the most common answer is pretty much right in the middle, slightly stressed, but feeling confident. We love to see that. We want to, again, make sure that everybody feels as comfortable as possible. Right after that, the most popular is, it's OCI season, need I say more? I feel like everybody on the call today can relate to that. Then we have another good group of folks that are comfortable and excited. And then it was pretty much tied between cool as a fan and help, I'm drowning. So Kristen, I don't know about you, but I'm glad to see that people aren't, as super panicked. It feels like everybody has a decent comfort level, but of course a good refresher and everything is always useful.
Yeah, I'm happy to see those results. And hopefully by the end of our webinar today, anybody who feels like they're drowning may be feeling a little bit better after hearing all of the stuff we have to share today.
Yes, and definitely let us know if there's anything else after the webinar today that we can do to help support you. That's ultimately what the Flo Recruit team is here for, and we want to make sure that everything goes as smoothly as possible for you. All right, moving right along. So now getting into some best practices. So this first one is focusing on the best practices for both the interviewers and the students. So the first two I have bolded on purpose, specifically for the students. One thing that I want to emphasize to you to, of course, tell your students about is asking them to please, please, please restart their computers the night before. And what that allows to happen is any applications that may be running in the background that maybe they don't even realize, it allows that to completely close out. It just gives the computer a nice, good refresh. And even too, it might make sure that any updates that are pending get implemented onto the computer. Which leads me into my next one, which is also super important, especially for the students. We want to make sure that not just their browser is up to date, but also their computer's operating system. Something that we have seen during the spring OCI season is when students had maybe like they just hadn't gone through and updated their computer in a while for programs that were having them upload any candidate documents. They were having some trouble there. And then once they restarted their computer, implemented the update, then everything was completely fixed. So if you don't tell your students anything else, please, please, please tell them those first two. The next one is to use the updated Google Chrome browser. This is for all of our users across the board. Chrome is the preferred browser for Flo Recruit. They also need to accept any camera and microphone permissions in the browser. And so we have a little prompt and instructions to where they can find that. And so as long as they do that, in addition to updating everything as outlined above, they should have no problems. And then as what's shown in the picture there, it's always really helpful for them to wear headphones. I'm not wearing headphones right now. However, that is a good way to make sure that any, there's no other sounds picking up from their mic and things like that. And everything is kind of, centralized and not picking up any background noise. Next, they should sit near a Wi-Fi router or use an Ethernet cable if they are working remotely and have that capability. The next one is more so for the interviewers, but we have seen some students who have been still trying to use Flo Recruit on a VPN. So best practice is for them just to disconnect from that altogether, if at all possible. For the interviewers, I do recommend that their employers go through a test call with us if they haven't already, just to make sure that if there are any firewall or security issues that might be blocking the Flo Recruit video chat, then that gets figured out prior to their interviews actually taking place. And then lastly is that all participants should heavily rely on the in-app support chat. So I feel like most of the folks on the call today have used the support chat themselves from an admin side, but for the interviewers and the students, they have access to the same support chat within their video chat screen. So definitely push them to ask questions directly to us. We can help them a lot faster. Otherwise, it might be a little bit of a game of telephone where they're coming to you and you're trying to relay that to us, which ultimately takes time. So use the chat. Kristen, anything else to add there?
Oh, we did have a question come in about if there's going to be an updated student guide that can be shared with students with this information. And so I just wanted to say that on our Help Center, which Ashley will share a little bit more about here in a few slides, there is a collection of articles specifically for students. The one you send is preparing for your video chat. And in here, it's going to have all of these bullet points that Ashley went over in a document that you can easily share with them.
Awesome. Thanks, Kristen.
You're welcome.
Okay, and then the next is best practices for you, the admins who are creating and generating and facilitating the OCIs and job fairs within your Flo Recruit accounts. So most important thing is whenever you are creating your interview schedules and your events in Flo, we really strongly ask that you include your law school or the job fair name in the event name where you create that event. The reason for that is because not only is that event name visible to, of course, you as the admins, but it's also visible to the interviewers and the employer admins, so the recruiters who are participating in those interviews, and then also to the students. So we just want to make sure that all parties involved are able to easily and quickly identify who like which event is for which school or job fair without having to dig too deep. Second is it would be a good idea for you to inform your employers of schedule release timelines. And what I mean by that is let them know when you are planning to actually send out the schedule emails, which has the interviewer schedules, their video chat links, and things like that. But also too, whenever you create the event, you have the option to share that event with employers who are also Flo Recruit clients. This does not affect those who, the employers who don't use Flo internally day to day for their own events. This is only for those who are also clients. But what that does is it sends them a read-only copy of that event to their account. And by now, this is our third OCI, virtual OCI season with you guys, and they have come to kind of expect that. So oftentimes they'll come to us asking when, certain schools might be sending that. So any information that you can give those employers ahead of time will make it a lot easier. And then next to another thing to inform employers of is when you are going to have student documents become available. Not all schools and job fairs utilize Flo's student documents feature, but for those that do, you have the option to set the timeline of when those documents will be actually released to the employers. Everybody does it a little bit differently, and that's totally fine. But it's going to be important for the employers to be able to see and know when those documents will be available. So that's another thing that you should tell them in advance. The next one is a save as draft feature, which we'll actually dive into a little bit later, but this is something that was released last year that we just want to make sure that everybody is aware of, that's available to you. That way you can set up all the details of the event without having to actually make it live. Next, going back to student documents, if you are having students upload documents into Flo, just make sure that they receive their schedule emails before the employers do. It's not the end of the world if you have the email set to go out to both the students and the employers at the same time. But the reason why it's a good idea to have the student emails go out first, for example, 48 hours before, and then have the employer emails go out 24 hours before, is because that will give the students time to actually upload those documents into Flo. That way, whenever the employers receive the schedule emails, if you have the settings for student documents set to be immediately available, they'll go in there and they can start looking at those materials as soon as they get that email. Next one is use an automatic email send option to ensure that participants also receive the automatic schedule updates. So we'll talk a little bit about this again later, but if you are using our automatic send options, which again can be 24 hours before, 48 hours before, things like that, once those emails have been sent, and let's say you come back into the event and you have to make a change to the schedule, once you save those changes, that will trigger an automatic update email to be sent to the employers and also the students too, if it affects them directly. And it will tell them exactly what those changes were on the schedule. So that will prevent you from having to send anything manually. And then lastly, another piece that we'll dive into in a bit is that you can utilize Flo's edit interviewer name feature. This was something that was also available last year, but makes it easier for you to simply change the interviewer name without actually changing the video chat link. That's important, especially for the recruiters, because we know that typically they're just forwarding the video chat emails and things like that to the interviewers. And by doing it that way, the link remains the same, but when there is a last minute interviewer change, the name information on that link is correct.
Ashley, we did have a question come in. Is there any way to more clearly see what emails have gone out to students and employers? I remember this being a bit confusing last year.
Yeah, that's a great question. So within Flo, we don't have any type of like an email log or anything like that. Something that we have noticed some schools doing, this isn't a perfect solution, of course, but what we have noticed is there's some schools who will set themselves up as like a fake employer student and things like that, so that they also get emails at the same time that the employers and the students do. So that's an option. Otherwise, if you are getting notifications that people aren't receiving emails for whatever reason, you can send us a chat. We can look into it for you on our side, but internally within Flo, that's not something that you have visibility into. Cool. All right, so more best practices. One of the places that you can go to find all of our tip sheets, training documents, short training videos, again, recordings for our webinars and things like that, is our virtual resource center. So kind of think of this, as well as our help center, which I'll go into next, as some of your one-stop shop places to find any of those things. So I have the link here on the screen, but this is on our website. We have different sections for interviewers, the law school or university, the students, and also the recruiter. So there's multiple different sections. And then within that, the training documents are tailored to that specific user. On this page too, we also have a section to where you can send people the link to book a test call. So majority of the people that use that are the employer side. We don't necessarily have very many students who use it, but if there's somebody that does need to do it, especially if they don't have a reliable Wi-Fi connection, then you can direct them to that link. And then next is our help center. So what's really cool about this is that the help center is now actually integrated into your Flo Recruit account. So not sure if anybody has noticed, but if you are in Flo, on the bottom left-hand side of your account is now on the left-hand sidebar is a little help center icon. If you click on that, it will open up a new tab and bring you to this screen like what you're seeing here. And what's great about this is it does have a lot of the same resources that are on our virtual resource center. However, for you specifically as our university admins, we have some amazing step-by-step articles that walk you through how to set up interviews, things that you can send to the students so that they can, know exactly how to upload documents and things like that. Our lovely Kristen on the call today has written majority of those and has put in a lot of work and effort into making sure that those are useful to you. So highly recommend you take a look at those, especially as you were actually going through the process, of setting up your events. Okay, Kristen, any questions?
Yeah, two follow-up questions came in after the best practices slide. So the first one is, if a change is made to one employer's schedule, are emails sent automatically to every employer or just the employers affected by the change? Great
question. So changes to schedules and those update emails will only go to the employers who were affected by that change. So it's not going to go to everybody, just those whose schedules themselves were actually changed.
Awesome. And then one more question. Can there be an option added to send now when creating an email?
So we can put in that request. It's not available at the moment. The other option that we have there, well, you always actually have the option to send emails right then and there. It's not an option right within the email template per se. But once you save your events, let's say you're creating the schedules 3 days prior, but you want to have the schedule email set to go out 24 hours before, so the day before, just to make sure that everything is as up to date for the employers as possible. Once you save the event, the next page that you'll be taken to is the saved event page. And then on the far right-hand side, there are 3 dots. When you hover over that, you will see options to send the schedules to all employer contacts or all students. So that is the best way to just trigger the emails to go right then and there. It is a manual piece, but in terms of adding that extra drop-down menu option within the email, that's something that we can put in a request for. So thank you for that feedback. All right, anything else so far?
It looks like one last question came in on chat. It says, if we want students to upload their resume into Flo, would we just give them this instruction in the auto email that goes out 48 or 24 hours before the interviews?
Yes, that is a great question. And I feel like it's something that we'll talk about in a few more slides, but I highly recommend that you include any links to help articles and things like that within those email templates, because anything that you put in the body of those templates will show up at the top section of the scheduled emails that the students receive. So they will see any text that you put in there before they even see their schedule down on the bottom of the email. So yes, absolutely.
Perfect. If you want to go ahead and go to the next slide. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into some different pieces of actually creating the interview events. Feel free to drop questions in the Q&A as we go through each of the sections to make sure we get all of those answered. So first up, we're going to talk about uploading the CSV file. So just like before, you will always go in and create your schedule in either Simplicity or 1220. Once you have those schedules finalized, then you can come here to Flo Recruit and get ready to upload that. Ashley, can you go ahead and pull up our template? So when you go into Flo Recruit and to our schedule section, you'll always be able to download our template, and we definitely encourage you to do this. We have all of the headers set up that are required, and then what this will allow you to do is copy and paste information from your export from Simplicity or 1220 and just put in the necessary information into Flo Recruit. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly go through a couple sections of the spreadsheet and point out some things that you want to remember while you're getting this together. So in the first column, we have employer. And something you'll notice here, for example, with Aiken Gump and Cooley, is there are office locations behind the names. If you have a firm that's participating in your OCI event, and they have multiple office locations participating, you'll want to make sure that you include the office location behind the name for each schedule. If you don't do that, it's going to group that entire firm's schedule all as one. And so each office won't have their own separate schedule, and it'll just be a little bit harder for the recruiters to figure out which links are for their attorneys in their offices. Next is the date section. So it does need to be in this specific format. So you do want to have the 3-letter month, the numerical value, and the superscript following. Something that our engineers have worked really hard on is the error messaging with our spreadsheet. So if you do upload your CSV file and the date isn't in the right format, or you have information missing, it's going to really specifically tell you what is wrong, so you can easily go in and fix that and then re-upload your spreadsheet. From there, we'll go to interview time. So this does need to be in this specific format as well. So just make sure with the date and the time that you use our example that's going to show up at the top of the template, and use that formatting. That'll just save you time from having to go back later and correct that. Another thing to point out is the interviewer column. So with interviews, all of the schedules go directly to the recruiter and not to the actual interviewer. So the only information that we have for the interviewer is going to be their first and last name. And if you do need to have multiple interviewers within the same interview room, you'll just separate their names with a comma, like we can see with Jessica Pearson and Harvey Specter.
Any
Then
Suits
we have
fans out there will know those names.
I have not seen Suits, so I didn't catch that. Awesome. So recruiter information, just first name, last name, email address, same thing for students. Ashley, can you scroll over to the last column for me? Okay, perfect. So the last thing that we want to point out and is really important is this virtual interviews information column. So most of the time you won't put anything in here, but you may run into an employer that wants to use an external meeting link like a Zoom or WebEx link, and they provide you with that link. If you do have a firm doing that, this virtual interviews information column is where you would enter that link. Otherwise, you need to leave it completely blank. And you will get an error message if you enter in anything in here that is not a link.
Yes.
Ashley, have any questions come in over the spreadsheet?
Yes. So somebody asked how many interviewers can be in one room?
There's not a max number of interviewers per se. Generally, for a meeting room, we'd say 15 to 20 would be, a good number. Anything over that, you might run into video quality issues. But if it's less than 20, you should be fine. You would just separate each of those interviewers' names with the comma.
Can you talk a little bit more specifically though about like for interviews, if there is a max number of interviewers per room?
You can, I'm sorry. So they're asking how many interviewers can be in one room?
Yeah, so like in this interviewer column, I think they were just wondering if there is a max here for interviews. I can't imagine there being 15 to 20 people, but yeah, just specifically about the interviewers.
Yeah, no, you can have as many in here as you need. The important thing is separating it with a comma. That's what's going to get each of those interviewers their own interview meeting link.
Awesome. We had another question come in that says, if we are provided a Zoom link that includes a password, how do we incorporate that into the spreadsheet?
Yes, so you can, once you've uploaded your spreadsheet and the schedule has been built, you can go into that specific time slot and it'll be selected as custom. The Zoom link will be in there. You can just add some spaces behind the Zoom link and then type in password and whatever that password is. And then once the interviewer or the student goes to their Flo Recruit meeting link, they'll see a message saying, their next session is happening somewhere else. They'll be able to click directly on that Zoom link to be taken to Zoom, and then that password would be displayed there on the screen for them as well.
Yeah, and one more thing to add there that Kristen touched on earlier is that and something also in a later slide is that we have more validation to hopefully prevent any accidental inclusion of what the Flo Recruit system used to think was a virtual or an external link. And so as long as you have a Zoom link in there and afterwards you include that password, then it will post in there and the student can easily click on the link and then type in the password manually.
Awesome.
Okay.
Were there any other questions?
Nope, that's it so far.
Awesome. Do you want to go ahead and go back to the slide deck and we can go to the next slide? Okay, perfect. So we're going to go ahead and touch on student documents. So I know Ashley talked a little bit in our best practices, but just as a reminder, when you create your interview event, you can select the documents that you want your students to upload. before their interviews. So you can request resumes and transcripts. If specific employers are requesting things like a cover letter or a writing sample, you can also request those here as well. A couple things you will need to make selections on are the timing of the documents. So you will get to determine when those employers are actually able to view the documents. You have 3 options available. You can create a custom date and time at the start time of the interview, or the third option is immediately. And that immediately option is as soon as a student uploads the documents. So if you send out the final schedule to students and then final schedule to employers, but your students are waiting till the last minute right before the interviews start, then the employers wouldn't be able to see them until the students actually go on there and do that. Another thing is the custom employers. So like I mentioned, you can request documents like a writing sample or a cover letter, but that may not be something that all of the employers are requesting. So if it's just a document that one employer is requesting or a handful of employers are requesting, you can select specifically which firms are able to see those documents. So it's not necessarily made available to all of the employers that a student is interviewing with. For the students to be able to upload their documents, they do need to receive the final schedule email from you. So if you set it up 24 hours or 48 hours before, as soon as they receive that email, they'll be able to go into their meeting lobby and upload their documents. We really suggest, like Ashley mentioned, that in that final schedule email to them, that you include directions and let them know that they need to go in and upload those documents, that it's best for them to do that beforehand and not wait till the last minute to do so. And then as we can see in the screenshot here, as they go through and upload those documents, they will get a green check mark so they can easily keep track of the documents that they've uploaded and if they have any additional ones left that they need to upload. Anything to add in here, Ashley?
The one thing that I would add is that one other product update that we made is that for you as admins, if you are setting up the custom docs here, which the screenshot in the upper left corner is for when you are actually like editing the event. Once you create the event and you go back to that saved event page, there's also another section there that shows you what your student document settings are. Previously, you would have had to actually go into edit mode to look at that information, but you can now see it on your saved event page without having to go into edit.
Awesome, great shout out.
We actually had a couple of questions come in. So the first one is, if we request a resume, do students have to upload the resume before being allowed to interview?
That's a great question. So as soon as they go to their meeting link, they will receive a pop-up that asks them to upload documents and will show them which documents they have the ability or they need to upload. There is an X in that box to where they can close out of it. So we're never going to prevent anyone from being able to participate in their interviews. But each time they go back into the meeting link, they'll see that pop up. And if a student were to close out of that on accident or want to go back and do it later, on the left-hand panel where they normally see their schedule, there will also be a blue button that says upload documents, so they can get back into that window where they can upload their documents.
Awesome. And then another question came in, David, if you want to clarify what you're asking, but the question is, students give doc permissions for each doc. It sounds like the question is more asking like if they have a say in what type of documents they request for employers. So I guess if we're looking at it from that lens, Kristen, can you answer that question?
Yeah, so if we look at this upload resume screenshot where we can see all of the green dots, we can see the employers listed for this resume. And so as they upload a document, they can click the button to select all employers to make that document available to all of them, or they could upload a different resume for each employer. I don't know why a student would necessarily want to do that for resume, but for like a writing sample or a cover letter, that would more make sense to where they could upload a specific document and then pick the employer that they want that document to be viewable to.
Awesome. And then one more question that came in is, what if a returning student to Flo has a resume already uploaded? Can they upload a new version if needed?
Yes, that's a great question. So for each event, any interview event, it's always going to prompt them for a new one, even if they already have one on file in Flo Recruit. So they will upload a new resume, even if it's the same one that we already have.
Awesome. That's it.
Perfect. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, so here we're going to talk about the emails that you're going to be able to send out to the students as well as the employers. So with both of these emails, you can determine the timing that they will go out. So we have several automatic options available, as well as one that says manually send later. With manually send later, you do need to remember to come back into the event and click the button to trigger those to go out. One of the benefits of using the automatic options, like Ashley mentioned previously, is if you do make updates to the schedules after this email has already gone out, anybody affected by those changes will automatically receive an updated email. So one less thing that you have to worry about, all you need to do is go into the event, make your changes, and then know that those updates will go out automatically for you. Reply to, this always defaults to the admin logged into the account creating the event. You will have a drop down there where you can select any of the other admins. So if you want it to go to an individual, or if your department has a general recruiting box, you can add that as an admin on your account and select that as the reply to. That way, not one person is receiving any questions or replies. The subject and note section, we always provide a sample there for you, but they are completely customizable. In the email to students and the email to employers, we do suggest that you provide some information there. So for example, for the students, this would be a great place to tell them that they need to go in and upload their documents, remind them that it's best if they do it as soon as they receive this email instead of waiting till right before the interviews. You could also paste the link to the preparing for your video chat help article. That way they have that right there to be able to go in and do those different things that Ashley mentioned the night before to make sure everything's updated with their browser and their computer. For the employers, you could include in there when the documents are going to be available to them. So that way you don't get bombarded with questions saying, hey, we're trying to view their documents, you know, if you have it set to interview start time. That way they know that information right off the bat and can know when to expect to be able to view those. And then the last thing is that the bottom of each of the emails, we have variables that you can enter in to help personalize and customize these emails that are going to be going out. Anything that you have, Ashley?
Yep. So a question came in and they're asking, can multiple admins edit within Flo Recruit at the same time, or must it only be one person?
That's a really great question. I'm glad you asked. We definitely suggest that only one person make edits within an event. at a time. If you have multiple people in an event making changes and trying to save them, it's not going to be able to save all of those changes at once. So you can have multiple people logged in monitoring the dashboard, but I would just assign one person with the responsibility of making the changes. That way you don't have to worry about some changes saving and others not.
Awesome. All right. Moving, there we go.
Awesome. So editing schedules, this is something I'm sure you will do often during OCI. Unfortunately, last minute changes come up, but once you do it a couple times, it'll be really easy for you. So once the schedule has been uploaded through your CSV file, the nice thing is you can easily go in and make edits to that event without having to do another upload. The only time you would have to do an additional CSV upload is if you're adding an additional employer to your event. So your CSV is uploaded, you need to come in and make changes. At the top of the event, you'll see the edit event button. Then you can come into the schedule section. You can click into a specific time slot if you needed to edit the date and time. You can also switch out students, so you can edit students directly from the time slots. And then really important that Ashley mentioned is the ability to edit the interviewers. So as we can see here, we have the 3 dots next to our interviewers' names. Anytime you see the 3 dots in Flo Recruit, that lets you know that there's an additional menu to expand. So we'd be able to select edit interviewers. Now, next to each of the names, there is an X. If I were to click the X next to Harvey, that's going to completely remove him from the schedule. And then we could add an interviewer in. By doing it that way, that is going to change the video conferencing link. So what we could do instead is next to his name, click edit. This will allow us to update Harvey's name to the new interviewer's name, click save, and that's going to keep that video conferencing link the same and not create a new one for whoever the new interviewer is. And that's going to allow the recruiter to just have the original link and be able to send that out and not have any confusion on which link to be able to use.
Cool.
Anything that you want to add, Ashley, or any questions that came through?
Nope, we're good. We can go on to the next one.
Perfect. And then lastly, everybody's best friend during OCI, the live dashboard. So here is where you'll be able to come in and monitor the interviews as they're happening, make sure that the interviewers and students are in the room. And we have these great statuses to let you know if somebody's there or not. So just quick hit items to remind you. The way to tell if somebody is in the room is they will have a green dot next to their name. If they don't have a green dot, that lets you know that they're not in the room, and you can start reaching out to them to see if maybe they're having troubleshooting issues or they're just running late. You have these show hide filters up here at the top of the page, so you can control what statuses of interviews that you're seeing. And then you can click directly on the interviewer's name or the student's name to quickly access their meeting link if you need to send it to them because they don't know where it is or they can't find their email. That happens too.
Yes. Awesome. All right.
That's it for me.
Perfect. Oops, let's go through. Okay, so we have another live poll. So the question is, what are your biggest concerns going into this recruiting season? So it's a multi-select. You can choose as many as you'd like. So we have managing day-to-day logistics, technology in general, managing students, managing interviewers, COVID, getting help during an event, or other. So just like we did last time, we'll give it about 20 to 30 more seconds for everybody to be able to respond. Okay, lots of back and forth movement here. Okay, seems to still some coming in. All right, let's give it about 10 more seconds. All right, let's go ahead and see the results. All right, so what we have here, the most common answer is just managing the day-to-day logistics. So hopefully that's where we can be useful to you to help make sure that when it comes to things that take place on Flow, that you're comfortable. Any changes or questions that you have, let us know. The next most common, which was actually a very similar response in our employer client webinar, is managing interviewers. We all know that interviewers change, unfortunately, oftentimes last minute. So I completely understand that concern there. And then it's a tie pretty much between technology in general and managing the students. Next after that is getting help during an event, but that's not a huge percentage of you. So hopefully that means that most of you know that you can rely on us to give you assistance. And then last we have COVID and other. All right, so now moving on to product updates. So we'll go over a few different things here. We'll talk about the ability to save as a draft, talk about some updates to the CSV upload, and then talk about some updates on the live dashboard. So first one here is save as draft. So again, this was available. I'm pretty sure it was available during last OCI season, but it's something that I think could be really useful to you as admins, because oftentimes you want to get the email set up, you want to include links and make sure all of that information is exactly how you want it to be. And so this section now, the second section, which says event start time, so right before or right above the create schedules piece, that is what allows you to save your event as a draft. So you just have to put in the event start date, the start time, which is just a placeholder, nothing set in stone, and then the time zone. That will save you a lot of time. And when you look back on your events page, it will show you that this event is saved as a draft. Next one is CSV upload enhancement. So what's really cool about this one is that we have now implemented like a time zone sync. And so if you are using that save as draft feature and you've selected central time, for example, the next time you come in to upload that CSV, whatever time zone you selected will also apply to the upload modal. Previously, I believe the default was to Eastern, so that did cause some confusion. So hopefully this will make it a little bit easier for you. And then something that we touched on earlier is we have better validation of virtual interviews information. So that last column on the very far right of the CSV. So big difference here is that you have to have a link somewhere within that text. You can't just have like a yes or a no. Sometimes we saw some errors where there was text in that last column that was not intentional, and it would cause your schedules to be put in as if they were taking place outside of Flow. So now you have to have a link. Even if you include a password or something like that after the link, it will still work. That's just the important piece there now. All right. So with this one, we have an improved video chat preview screen. So whenever the participants come to their meeting rooms, their interview rooms, we have added some additional visibility into how they can adjust their camera and mic settings, get everything set up before they actually jump in to a interview room. And then we've also added virtual background. So this has been a long time coming, but in addition to the virtual background, they can also blur their background. So they do have to do this prior to the interview, and but hopefully it'll make it a little bit easier for them. Again, I know this was a big request for a while, so thanks for continuing to push on that. It is here now. All right. So with that, I want to make sure that everybody is able to kind of take a deep breath, soak in what you heard today and let us know if there's anything else that we can help you with, any questions that we can help clarify. We are here for you. So don't ever hesitate to reach out. Use that support chat in the bottom right-hand corner. Just know that the Flo Recruit team is here for you. You've got this. We believe in you. You're going to do awesome. Okay, so I see some questions come in. So let's go through those.
Okay, so the first question is, can we disable virtual backgrounds?
So you aren't able to disable them in the sense of hide them from anybody to give them the option to choose, but it's something that each participant, whether they be the interviewer or the student, would have to actually turn on per interview themselves. But it's just part of the platform now as an option, very similar to Zoom.
And then Kristen has a question. Can a new image be uploaded as a virtual background, or are these preset?
Great question. So they are preset virtual backgrounds. There isn't the functionality to upload a custom background at the moment.
Okay, let me see. It looks like that's all of the questions in the Q&A.
Awesome. Okay, so last but not least, of course, if you think of any more questions while we're still chatting, please put them in there. But the last thing that we wanted to say for our webinar today is to give you a little sneak peek into, or talk a little bit about what we have been working on for the future of Flo Recruit. So I feel like, most of you know that we're always hard at work and trying to continue to improve the platform. And that is where you as our customers come into play. We take your
Ashley,
feedback.
can I stop you just real fast? It looks like people are putting questions in the chat.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so let me scroll through. It says, during the spring, I confirmed that the student and the interviewer were in the room. However, both participants did not have a green dot. Why would that be?
They didn't have a green dot, but they were in the room.
That's what it sounds like from the question from Kim.
It's if there wasn't a green dot, but they were in the room, it may have just been a lag in the dashboard updating for some reason. We have made some improvements to the live dashboard to hopefully make it a little more clear. For example, on the interviewer side, when there is a guest in the room. So hopefully if that was the case, maybe they were on a guest link and they were in the room themselves. That would be one way that the interviewer wouldn't show up as being in the room. But as far as the student, there isn't a guest link. So let us know if that comes up, or maybe if it was recent, and we can dive into the call logs and things like that on the back end to see why that may have happened. But the green dot should show. It may have just been like a little bit of a lag there.
Another question is, if I need to join a meeting, do I show up on my video, or do they just hear my voice, or is it through chat?
So if you as admins have to jump into a room via the join as guest button, it is actually putting yourself in the room. However, you don't have to turn on your camera or mic. We've actually heard of some people go into like stealth mode. They just pop in, don't turn on their video or their mic, and they just jump in so that they can chat in. Otherwise, if you want to just quickly vocalize something to whoever is in the room, that join as guest function allows you to do that.
And something else to note about that join as guest button, there was recently an update to extend the availability of that button. Previously, once a meeting time ended, you couldn't join in there, but we have extended that. So if there is a particular interview that's in that overtime status, you'll now have that join as guest button, so you can go in there and kindly remind them that they have other interviews to move along to.
Yes, thank you, Kristen. Full disclosure, we had a slide on that and I don't know where it went, but we'll send information on that if you have more questions, but hopefully that makes it easier for you to stay, keep the trains moving and keep everything on time. All
Okay.
right. Any more questions?
Yes. So when do students have the option to select their virtual background?
So they will do that once they click on their video chat link. It will take them to our virtual lobby, which will, if it's up to if it's 2 minutes prior to the start time of their meeting, that's when they have access to click on the join call button. Once they click on that join call, that's when that little modal will pop up and they can choose their settings. So it's in between them saying, yes, I want to join, and them actually being put into the interview room.
And then the last question is a follow-up on virtual backgrounds. Can students select their virtual background in advance of the interviews, for example, when they're uploading their documents?
No, so as I was kind of alluding to earlier, they have to it has to be right before their interview starts. The meeting rooms on Flo Recruit don't open until 2 minutes prior to the start time of the meeting. So they would have to do it right before they jump into the room. Okay.
Awesome. I think that's it. Off to you.
All right. Okay, so it looks like actually some of our stuff got a little jumbled up. So let's go. Okay, not sure what happened here. Sorry, y'all, but what we were going to briefly touch on, and it was just bullet points, so it wasn't any screenshots or anything like that. It was announcing the fact that we are working on something that we are calling interview scheduling. And so what that is, for those that haven't heard about it yet, is it's essentially going to allow you to manage the process of setting up OCI schedules, not just from the point of the interviews actually taking place virtually, but also from the point of the employer and student registration and things like that. So I think it's ultimately going to make it a lot easier for you on the law school and job fair side to be able to facilitate and organize everything within Flo. And something that is shown here, actually, this is my slide, so sorry, is that you won't be able, or you won't have to upload a CSV file anymore. So that's the really exciting thing, is we know that CSV file can sometimes be a little cumbersome for people. That will completely be done away with, and you'll be able to do everything in Flo from the beginning. That way you're not having to worry about that. Okay, now we are officially wrapped up. So Kristen, anything else to add or any other comments from you?
No, that's it for me. Thank you, Ashley.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you all so much for joining. I really appreciate your time being here. Hopefully that was helpful. But again, let us know if there's anything else that we can help you with and questions as they arise.